Okay, we're live now.
Thank you. Councillor Boushy and Councillor Vandenberg, you're moving the motions to go in camera this morning.
I move that Sarnia City Council move into closed session and pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act to consider the following matters. Advice that the subject to the solicitor client privilege will be with the respect to a matter before the Ontario Land Tribunal, receipt of the commercial financial information supplied in confidence by the airport operator, and to receive information regarding negotiation with respect to the business development opportunities for the Sarnia Chris Hartsfield Airport and the Chief Administrative Officer review process.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay, we can reconvene in about 2 minutes and then back here at 1.
Audio check.
or close to it. Okay, if we can start the meeting. And I will start off with the chair. Not getting a great deal of sound back here. Andrew. I will now first of all do the territory spirit of peace and friendship. We honor the initiative of the Three Fires Confederacy on whose traditional territory we are gathered. The city of Sarnia has resolved to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. I would now ask you to stand for O Canada, and then if you can, for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Councillor Boushy, can you move the in-camera reports?
I move the committee rise and report.
I report that council received a legal opinion, some legal questions related to the official plan, the Ontario Land Tribunal appeal. And subsequent to that, at a future council meeting, we will receive that information in public for direction to be given by council in a public session. I report to you that we received detailed financial information about the Sarnia Airport, Chris Hadfield Airport, and council also will receive a form of that information in public session at the future meeting. And also that we started the annual and administrative process related to the CAO's review. And that is my report to you.
I report that the Sarnia City Council adopts the report of the closed meeting.
All those in favor? That is done. I will ask, are there any conflicts of interest? Councillor Vandenberg?
I'm not sure if it is, your worship, but I am a member of the Humane Society and we are the owners of the Brights Grove Animal Hospital, but I just want you to be aware of that. I don't believe there is a conflict.
Thank you for that. And now we have delegations. First of all, the development charges presentation, that's virtual. And it's just a 10-minute presentation to you, and then there'll be future directions sought on this in months ahead through the public process. If you'd like to go ahead, we have 10 minutes scheduled for you to present to us with questions.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to council. I'll just be providing a very brief presentation on the project status and update on a little bit about Bill 23 with respect to the impact on the development charge background study. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And the next slide, please. So as part of our development charge background study process, we're working with Dylan Consulting, who's doing an analysis of the transit component of the review. We're also looking at a community benefit charge strategy and bylaw as well. And so we're hoping to have the development charge background study draft calculations are almost complete. So we're hoping to have the background study by the end of February. And then we're working on this community benefit strategy and bylaw, hoping to have those calculations done by the end of the month as well. The third component of our process is working on the parks plan. So in association with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, they've prepared a parks plan. And we're looking to utilize that information to update the parkland dedication bylaw for the city. And again, we're hoping to have that drafted by the end of the month as well, as Monteith Brown has completed their draft of the parks plan. Next slide, please. So just briefly for development charges, these are capital costs. These are used to recover capital costs associated with growth in the municipality, so both residential and non-residential growth. And so these capital costs are in addition to what would normally be constructed or paid for by a developer as part of their subdivision. So if you think about a typical subdivision, there's some internal roads, sewers, water mains, sidewalks, etc. That's normally constructed and paid for by the developer. And development charges are to recover capital costs for the broader infrastructure to really connect these developments with the municipal infrastructure. And so municipalities are empowered to impose these charges on new development through the Development Charges Act. Next slide, please. So there's a number of services that are eligible for recovery. But what we've highlighted in this teal color is what we're looking at as part of the study. So water, wastewater, stormwater, services related to a highway or roads, policing, fire, and parks are all included in the city's current development charge bylaw. In addition, we're looking at the services in the orange, so transit, library, and recreation services, which weren't included in the previous background study and bylaw. Next slide, please. So when we're going through the process, we're going to be releasing a background study with all the detailed calculations. There's something like 60 or 70 clauses in the Development Charges Act and multiple years of tribunal or board decisions on various calculation matters. Ultimately, what we're looking at is we have new development coming to the city. What's the cost of the infrastructure required to accommodate that growth? Divide that by the amount of growth we have. And ultimately, we're going to come up with a development charge per unit for residential development and a development charge per square foot for non-residential developments. Next slide, please. So in considering the funding of this growth-related infrastructure, we like to show this kind of triangle. And at the top, you can think of this as the infrastructure required to accommodate the growth that's coming into the city. And so for that infrastructure, to the extent it's growth-related, you can use development charge funds or revenues to pay for those capital costs. If you don't use development charges, but you still have those capital costs and those costs that you're paying, the money has to come from somewhere. And so it's going to come from rates, if it's water and wastewater, the taxes, if it's the other services, or from existing reserves. Next slide, please. So as part of the consideration of council at a future date, once we provide the background study, we go through the public process, hold the public meetings, council has the ability to provide relief through development charge exemptions or through separate incentive policies. Now, these two methods are widely used across the province, with municipalities more so leaning towards utilizing incentives or grants equivalent to development charge exemptions through community improvement plans. And this is because this gives council more flexibility in terms of analyzing these development applications on a case-by-case basis, setting out detailed criteria on which type of development might meet that, the specifications to get the grants, and allow yourselves to kind of budget at a certain amount that you annually want to provide in terms of grants or incentives. You could also include exemptions directly into the development charge bylaw, and the city does have some discretionary exemptions in the bylaw, but it's harder to analyze these on a case-by-case basis, and you have to set parameters at a very high level in the bylaw, versus if you do it through an incentive program, you can get far more detail. And so we bring this up for council's consideration, and because at a future date, you'll be considering the discretionary exemptions in the bylaw. And if we go on to the next slide, it lists the current exemptions in the bylaw. And so we kind of bring this up so that you're aware of the potential for bonusing. You don't want to be giving certain types of developments breaks on the DC versus others. The Development Charges Act does provide that you should be providing for these rules set out in the bylaw. So if a specific class or category of development, such as, let's say, all the development in the 402 Business Park area, is to get an exemption, then that's in the bylaw and everyone there gets an exemption. If we go to the next slide, one of the things I want to touch on is just the changes to the Development Charges Act as a result of Bill 23. So there's a number of changes, including mandatory exemptions and such, which are going to impact the calculations and the application of the bylaw. So there's an additional residential unit exemption. So if I go build a single detached home, right now I can put up to 2 apartments in the basement, and I don't have to pay a DC. What they've added now is if I'm a townhouse or a row house, I can put 2 apartments in the basement, or 1 in the basement, 1 in a garage suite or garden suite. So there's an additional exemption applied. There's new statutory exemptions, so mandatory, for affordable, attainable, and nonprofit housing. Now, I will note that these are enforced now, except for affordable and attainable housing. Those will come forth at a later date when there's further definitions provided. Some of the calculations we have to do, they've extended our historical level of service calculations from 10 years to 15 years. They've removed the ability to recover studies in the development charge background study. And then there's also this mandatory phase-in. So whatever charge we end up calculating through this process, you can only implement 80% of that calculated charge in the first year, and then 85% the second year, and so on until you reach 100% after 5 years. Okay. What we're seeing with other municipalities is this will actually result in approximately a 10% reduction in DC revenues, which again has to be funded through other sources. The bylaw life now is extended from 5 years to 10 years, so you can increase the life of the bylaw. There's an additional discount for rental housing based on the number of bedrooms. There's a requirement to allocate funds in a reserve fund. So 60% of any beginning balance in the water, wastewater, and roads reserve funds need to be allocated to projects. And then there's also a cap on the interest rate applied to certain types of developments. So all that to say, there's going to be a general reduction in DC revenue collection and an increase in these mandatory exemptions and funding from other sources. Next slide, please. So just to kind of finalize and wrap up with the anticipated timelines for the rest of the process, we're anticipating the background study for the development charges bylaw will be complete and draft by the end of February, and looking to make that public and then hold the public process, so public meeting and bylaw passage around March to April. The community benefit charge strategy, we're hoping to have that draft analysis by the end of February. Look to have stakeholder discussions in probably March, and then have that final strategy and bylaw available April. And then for the parkland dedication bylaw, looking to finalize the parks plan and the financial analysis that goes along with that later in February, early March. Again, undertake those stakeholder discussions in March, and then consider the bylaw April or May. Next slide, please. And so that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right, Councillor Dennis, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm a big believer in always being competitive. So to speak in terms of what other municipalities charge or offer, as such, I think it is very important we understand how our development charges compare to other municipalities, especially our neighbors. Will this study include that comparative look? Thank you.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yeah, we can include a survey of what other municipalities do right in the background study. Typically, we present it at the public meeting through the presentation, but more than happy to include that right in the background study.
Thank you, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I have a question, several questions actually, Mr. Abbs. Referring particularly to page 7, when you said that, and this is just general, that DCs pay for the capital costs of bringing in new buildings, etc., new development. But what if you don't have to build anything? If the infrastructure is already there, so basically an infill project, how does that affect your development charges then?
So through the mayor, great question. So if there's no requirement to expand the infrastructure, let's say it's an infill project, there's no requirement to expand the pipes or expand capacity in any treatment plants, then there would be no capital item included in the charge, and it would not impact the development charge calculation at all.
Okay, thank you. And my second question has to do with not infilling projects. I have to go back to my notes. Oh, yes. We, with regard to community improvement plans, as I understand it, we already have a community improvement plan put in place for Minton Village. So how are the incentives that you have incorporated into that plan? What are the tools that a community needs to go from the aspirational to the actual? From aspirational to actual.
So through the mayor, what you can do, rather than providing a development charge exemption in the bylaw, you can provide an equivalent to that exemption through a grant under the CIP program. So if that CIP program was updated to provide for an equivalent grant of whatever the development charge payable would have been, then that will provide that exemption kind of through that incentive policy or that incentive program.
So if at, say, budget time, a council wants to put in, wants to give a grant, they have that because they have the community incentive, the community improvement plan, or do we have to add something else into the community improvement plan so it's not viewed as aspirational but actual? Is there any wording that we have to put in, or can we simply fall back on the community improvement plan and grant and make the grant?
Yeah, so through the mayor, it's my understanding that I believe you can update the community improvement plan to then include the grants. I believe you'd have to update the community improvement plan, but that might be a better question actually for planning staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions. So Councillor Burrow.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things. One is, I believe we have certain areas in the city that have exemption for And like, for example, downtown, is that still able to be continued under this Bill 23, or can you in effect show favoritism to certain areas, or does it everything have to be applied across the board?
So through the mayor, good question. You do still have the ability to provide exemptions or grants equivalent to the exemptions for specific areas. So if you have, and it's very common to have exemption areas for a downtown corridor. I know in others, let's say for Niagara region, they have gateway corridors, which, you know, in terms of economic development, they want to provide incentives in those areas. So you can still provide the exemptions to various areas. And if you want to continue along with the same exemptions that you currently have, you still can.
And generally, it appears to me from what I read that with this new bill, 23, I think it is, the amount of these development charges that we're able to charge are quite a bit less than what they used to be. Is that correct?
And to the mayor, that is correct. There are a number of exemptions that will have to be applied. And then additionally, with the mandatory phase-in, municipalities are looking at a reduction of about 10% in DC revenues.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate the presentation. We'll see you further in the spring. I have three other delegations. First is Lauren McDonald from the Bluewater Gymnastics Club. And there is a report to you asking that the negotiations on the lease with Bluewater Gymnastics be referred to staff for further discussion.
Mayor Bradley, city councilors, thank you for having us here today. I am Lauren McDonald, and I'm joined by Anita Small, the executive director of the Bluewater Gymnastics Club, and Stephanie Turnbull, the vice president of the board of directors. With our lease of our current facility being up for renewal at the end of this year, the three of us, along with Rob Dawson, the board chair, whom I work closely with, have been working together to think through some options to renew our lease and what could be the next path forward to continue the success of our organization and club. So today we're really excited to share some of our thoughts with you and to start these discussions on what this next chapter for Bluewater Gymnastics could look like. Next slide, please. Next slide as well. At the end of the day, you know, over the last 30 years, the club, we've been very proud of the growth and the impact the club has been able to have in this community. And over the last 20 years, we've been so proud to call our current state-of-the-art facility our home, which was built and designed in partnership with the city of Sarnia. You know, there's several reasons why this is a great space and why we've loved it over the last 20 years. Its prime location allows for us not to just not to attract members from within Sarnia City Center, but across Lambton County. The fact that we share this space with soccer gets us greater attraction, and we actually have a lot of our families enroll in both programs. So we've really enjoyed being able to have this space and share it with them. There's several other areas, but we just wanted to highlight a couple of the reasons why this has truly been a fabulous facility, and we've really appreciated it. Next slide, please. The club is led by three rock star full-time staff members who each have over 20 years of experience in this space and a huge passion for gymnastics. The three full-time staff work with over 30 part-time staff and a deep board of directors as well, who have passion for gymnastics in the club. The reason we wanted to highlight our team here is that we believe we have the ingredients for success to continue to grow this club and to continue to make an impact in our community. Next slide. This team that I just highlighted and that's standing here today, in 2022, actually just charted our next 3-year strategic plan. We really believe that in order to grow and have success, we need to have a strong vision for what we're trying to achieve. And we were very proud that we were able to meet all of our goals in our previous strategic plan and chart a new path forward to continue our growth and success in 3 key pillars. Our first one is just on pursuing a center of excellence, which is really looking internal and making sure that we're empowering our staff and our employees to feel valued, to feel like they are adding to everyone's experience that comes through our doors. We want to engage our community. So how do we continue to bring positive light to the Bluewater Gymnastics Club and increase just our satisfaction across the board? The third pillar is something we call growth through innovation. That's just not wanting to be complacent, always trying to find a way to be adaptable, which has been very important over the last few years, but to continue to find new revenue streams, new way of bringing in strategic partners. How can we do more for the community and continue to serve the members that we already have? The full strategic plan is available on our website if you're interested in learning more there. Next slide, please. Our Bluewater Gymnastics community, we have over 1,000 youth and children from across Sarnia and Lambton County. Of this, 65% are actually under 5 years old. We like to highlight that stat because we are known for our elite athletes, but it's really a space that is that first time mom and tot, some of the first place that your kids are enrolled to start meeting other kids, learning competition, learning how to have fun. And we're really proud of being able to have that space and that impact in our community. As we said, we always try and make sure that we are focused on not just saying things, but measuring and achieving. So we're very proud of our recent customer satisfaction surveys that say that our staff are things like friendly and accommodating, and that most importantly, kids are having fun at our club. Next slide. Another thing that we're very proud of is what we say is keeping our costs low to keep our club accessible. We are right now the lowest cost, we have the lowest recreational class cost compared to other similar community or owned or nonprofit operated clubs in Ontario. We charge $14 an hour for our 1 hour program or $20 for our 90-minute program. And that's something that we kept in mind when we were considering our options for renewal, as we're happy to be able to allow more families to afford gymnastics. Next slide, please. So our current facility right now is just under 15,000 square feet, and we pay an annual rent of $25,000. So it does work out to about $1.71 per square foot in terms of our both our base rent and our maintenance. We know this is very low. This lease has been around for 20 years. So when we were thinking through our options for renewal, we carefully considered, we looked at the market, worked with local realtor to understand what was comparable fair market value for spaces that meet our requirements, both in terms of space, ceiling height, and whatnot, just to understand and make sure that we were putting forth options that were fair market value. So our first option, next slide, please, is a straight renewal. This allows us to keep our rates as low as possible and repurpose our existing footprint and increase our rent. We're proposing a increase to $5 per square foot. That's a combined base rent and common area maintenance fees. That is almost 200% above where we are now. This will put us on the lower end of fair market value in terms of rent. And the reason here is that, unfortunately, our space right now, we have already maximized the space that we're able to use. So we aren't able to add additional programming, and we have some restrictions there. So we won't be able to grow the way we would like to, but it still allows us to continue to offer our services to the club and the members that we have now. Our second option we wanted to throw on the table is, what would it look like? Next slide, please. What would it look like if we were able to expand our current facility by adding 2,500 square feet onto the east side of the building? This would give us more space to host and continue to grow our member base, but also to host competitions in the future. Right now, as it currently stands, our elite athletes actually have to start running from the change room in order to meet the distance that they need to run before hitting the vault. So we're not able to host, we found creative ways to make it work for them, but we're not able to host competitions because of the space that we have and the limitations. So thinking about what an expansion could be and how can we then add more classes in prime time and meet additional, have additional people.
Just
So-
a gentle reminder, we have a 10-minute rule.
Okay, yep.
Okay. thank you.
Sorry, I talk a lot. I'm very passionate. All right. So this one, again, we're proposing $7 per square foot and an increase in our space. Next slide. If the city of Sarnia is not interested in, continuing to be a landlord of this space, we're also wanting to put it on the table that we're open to discussing purchasing the facility from the city and to continue operating on our own at, of course, an appraised price and further discussions from there. So I think we can go to the next slide, which is really just showcasing all three options. And I'd love to open it up for questions. We're all happy to answer any.
Thank you. And you saw the recommendation, which is really to send this off to staff to sit down to have what you need to discuss at that level.
Correct. Yes.
Questions I've got or comments? I've got Councillor Dennis, Councillor Vandenberg.
Thank you very much, ladies. My niece, Lexi, was a member of the Bluewater Gymnastics Club for years. And I truly appreciate the value you bring to the community. The services you provide save families from having to go out of town. I also appreciate all the volunteer time that goes into this effort. So thank you so much to you ladies in the club. And I look forward to hearing or seeing the follow-up report from the staff. So kudos to you.
Councillor Gillis, Councillor Vandenberg. Okay, let's just move forward. Whoever wants to speak, please go.
Thank you very much. And through you, your worship, to the presenters, thank you very much for this presentation and for such a detailed accounting of what you're looking for. And just as someone who is a former coach of the Kinder Taught program many, many years ago, it provides a great value to the community. And also as a parent and a grandparent of participants, it's something that we have that is unique to us compared to other communities of our size. So thank you very much for this. And thank you for the overall proposal and the options that you presented. It really shows that it's a dynamic club that has a bright future.
Thank you. I got Councillor Vandenberg.
Thank you, your worship, through your worship. Thank you, ladies, for the presentation. Very enthusiastic. I guess your preference would be Lottie Neely. Is that correct?
Well, our preference would be expand at the option one price if we could, have the best of all worlds. But yes, we would like to stay. We love the facility and we would love to continue to find a way to grow and do more at that space.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Councillor Kilner.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. And I guess my quick question is, in option two, the renewal and expansion, what impact would that have on the soccer club? None?
Other side, we just
Oh,
have to,
right.
yeah, so it wouldn't
Okay.
have any impact on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
I have a question. I have a
Absolutely.
question. I just want to ask them if they can vote.
We can vote?
Can you vote? If you can vote, I'll vote for the motion.
I don't follow. What do you mean we can vote?
I think what I'll do to move this along is
Joke.
I will look. Councillor Burrows moving the recommendation. Seconder is Councillor Dennis, which just means it moves it to that other discussion. So thanks very much for your
Thank you
presentation.
so much.
It was very good. Thank you. Okay, JD Lawn, sir, I should call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. JD Lawn Service wanted to talk about the changes suggested to the streets bylaw. Council will note there are changes being recommended.
A presentation prepared?
I'm sorry.
You have a presentation prepared?
One moment, it should be up soon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Bradley, Sarnia City Councilors and city staff. My name is Heather Dawson and I'm the Operations Manager at JD Lawn Service.
I'm Bonnie Dawson and I'm the Director of JD Lawn Service. We'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today on various issues that are surrounding.
A little bit about us. We are a family-owned and operated property maintenance company specializing in year-round residential and commercial and industrial services throughout Lambton County. We are passionate about building relationships with customers through exceptional service, and we take pride in the community we live and work in. Next slide, please.
We're here today representing not only ourselves, but other snow contractors in the city and beyond. Let me be clear by stating we have the utmost respect for the Sarnia Police Service and their efforts to serve and protect our community. That being said, there has been concerns relating to our equipment on the road. Over the last several years, this equipment has been targeted with fines and in some cases forcibly towed from the road. As you can imagine, during a winter weather event, time is of the absolute essence, and having our equipment unavailable results in a delay of service, which could pose a serious safety and liability issue for our company and for the general public.
Our purpose here today is to educate you on the equipment used in our snow clearing operation and highlight the issues we are facing. The equipment is not unique to our business and in fact is used by private contractors and municipalities throughout Ontario. Next slide, please. Our pickup trucks are used to apply ice melter and for snow clearing purposes on commercial properties such as dentist offices. Blade width ranges from 8.5 to 9 feet, and when angled going down the road, they are within the maximum width set out under the Highway Traffic Act. Next slide, please.
Utility tractors are used to apply ice melter and to clear commercial sidewalks where larger equipment can't fit. Under the Highway Traffic Act, this machine, when equipped with a blade, is considered a road building machine and is permitted on city streets. Blade width is well within the maximum requirements. Next slide, please. Full-size tractors are used to clear large parking lots such as hospitals and commercial shopping centers. Similar to utility tractors, this machine is considered a road building machine and permitted to operate on city streets. However, the issue with Sarnia Police lies with the width of the blade. Next slide, please.
And lastly, our Kubota RTVs are used to clear some commercial sidewalks and assist with clearing smaller lots as well as residential driveways. The machine also acts as a mode of transportation for our sidewalk crews. Classified under the Highway Traffic Act, this machine is an off-road vehicle and is not currently permissible to operate on city streets. This was a surprise to us as we have been using these machines for over 10 years. When we first started using RTVs, police were unsure how to handle them on the road, and rightly so, as they were something fairly new to the industry. The recommendation was for us to have them plated, which we did. Since then, we've had no issues up until recently. Next slide, please. For those unfamiliar with a Kubota RTV, safety features are extensive. These machines are equipped with everything from seatbelts, mirrors, brake lights, blinkers, and much more. The Kubota has a fully enclosed cab with rollover protection that meets OSHA safety standards. Essentially, this machine is equivalent to driving a car down the road with the exception of speed, as the Kubota maxes out at 40 kilometers per hour. Next slide, please. Over the last 2 years, Sarnia Police have taken issue with these machines on the road as it goes against the Highway Traffic Act. Therefore, we are requesting a bylaw that will allow them to operate without issue. Been advised that if a bylaw is passed, we are still subject to the requirements set out in the Highway Traffic Act for road utility vehicles. That calls for helmets and traveling at a maximum speed of 20 kilometers per hour in a 50. Given the safety features of these machines, the requirements seem unnecessary. Wearing a helmet in an RTV is like asking you to start wearing a helmet in your car. In addition, asking a vehicle to travel 20 kilometers in a 50 zone will surely present far more issues than this machine traveling at its normal rate of speed. And finally, next slide, please. Requirements are contradictory to the recent bylaw passed to allow low-speed vehicles on city streets. While we are extremely supportive of this new venture for our city, it is frustrating to know that safety is not a standard across the board. Our question is, why are these tuk-tuks that can carry up to 6 passengers and travel at their normal rate of speed not subject to the same safety requirements? The only difference between our RTV and what is defined as a low-speed vehicle is our RTVs run on diesel and the low-speed vehicles are electric. Next slide, please.
Pictured on the screen is standard equipment used in today's snow removal industry. The Highway Traffic Act states a vehicle can have a maximum width of 8.5 feet. Anything over that is considered over width. In our research, we have yet to find a precedent in other municipalities where there's an exemption or a bylaw, which means to say that has never been an issue until now. Next slide, please. We're frustrated that private contractors are subject to different rules than municipalities, while the same or similar equipment is being used for winter maintenance. As you'll see in the video demonstrations, our operator is using a 14-foot blade angled to stay safely within his lane of traffic. If you can play the first of the 2 videos, please. And you'll note that this video was taken at approximately 11 a.m. on Indian Road on a Wednesday.
Next slide, please. While we appreciate the efforts of the city in coming up with proposed solutions, the nature of our work and the unpredictability of snow and ice, these solutions are simply not feasible. We need to use equipment on all roadways at any given time. Next slide, please.
We're growing increasingly frustrated trying to operate our business within the city of Sarnia. Precedents that could help guide decision-making in other municipalities do not exist. Meaning to say, this has never been an issue for other cities as far as we're aware. Low-speed vehicles that will soon be on the city streets carrying up to 6 passengers are not subject to the same safety standards, and we wonder why. Over-width blades that have been a standard for contractors and municipalities for years are suddenly an issue. Slide, please.
Sorry, how long, I'm being the bad guy here today, but
Okay.
we have a 10-minute rule to keep discipline,
Yes.
and I have to be fair to everyone.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
So
30 seconds.
Yeah, we're just finished. Thank you.
I'll take 45, don't worry about it. But I do have to keep the discipline in this
For
room,
sure.
otherwise
Yeah,
it
no, we
it
totally
drops
understand.
out.
Are these issues really a matter of safety? If safety is the real concern here, why are there illogical contradictions surrounding low-speed vehicles or exemptions for city work? If the proposed bylaw is approved, the exemptions state the bylaw does not apply to emergency service personnel or City of Sarnia employees while in the course of their duties. Safety should be a standard across the board, regardless if it is a private contractor or municipality. Next slide. We are asking for a solution so that off-road vehicles can operate without requirements of helmets or speed restrictions as it relates to commercial purposes. And finally, we are asking for a solution, next slide please, to allow commercial contractors the ability to use oversized blades for snow clearing purposes through a bylaw exemption or permit system. Next slide, please. I'd like to thank you for your time, attention, and consideration in these matters.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Couple of basic questions. Did you have any discussion with staff on this bylaw that's proposed? Or any input up till today?
We've had brief discussions that they're proposing a bylaw. However, from my understanding, the bylaw would still be subject to the Highway Traffic Act, requiring helmets and speed restrictions.
Okay, then who on staff is dealing with this matter?
David Jackson, yes.
Just maybe give a couple of comments on the presentation.
Sure. So through the mayor to council. So on the topic of the off-road vehicle bylaw, All we're doing is opting in, and then the rest of it is under the HTA and the OREG. And so the requirement for a helmet and the speed limit of 20 kilometers per hour is a provincial issue that we can't override with a municipal bylaw.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Vandenberg, you'd raised this before. Councillor Dennis?
Yeah, thank you, your worship. Yeah, we very familiar with this project. I spoke to Mr. Dawson the other day about it. As Mr. Jackson's indicated, I think we'll have, the problem with the Highway Traffic Act is that you have related regulations that deal with the sections under the Highway Traffic Act. And I've been dealing with the Highway Traffic Act for over 40 years. So what we have to do is we have to go back to the provincial government and we have to petition the Minister of Transportation to make some changes, because the problem is right now we have off-road vehicles, we have different acts, different regulations that are sliding past each other. And then that's the problem we get with the helmet issue, is that, so we have to go back, see if we get an amendment to the Ontario regs, which is possible, no problem. And then down the road. So Mr. Jackson's done a great job here crafting the new bylaw that gives us some exemptions. We're gonna have to live with them. I did send an email the other day about the overweight blade thing. We talked about a fleet permit fee for $390, I believe it was. That would offset that for now. I know it's a cost to them, but it'd be a lot cheaper than getting all the tickets and all the towing costs that are associated with what you folks have had and other, yeah.
To work with
Yeah.
anything like that.
So I would ask maybe just in approving this bylaw today, but moving forward, seeing if we can get Mr. Bailey to move on this and get some action with the government. As Mr. Dawson said to me, like clearing the helipad. He's got to be there within a few minutes to clear it, and it's got to be clear. Otherwise, that helicopter is not going to land. So those are the issues that we have. And so my suggestion would be we pursue it through the MPP's office and then continue on with it, but accept the bylaw today as written, and then at least these folks can do their job.
And I'll take that as a notice of motion for the next meeting, Councillor Vandenberg, if you could just flush it out a bit and provide it to us. Any other questions, Councillor Dennis?
Yeah, thank you, ladies. And you know what, you've been up here before with other issues too as well. Your business is very well respected in town, and your workers do a great job. It's unfortunate that you seem picked on. Like two things I'm for is common sense, and my parents ran a small business, and I know the challenges and tribulations that go along with that. Slide you put up with your machinery right beside that tic-tac or whatever they call them. It doesn't make any sense to me. So like I say, I share your frustration, and I'm all in for this change in bylaw, but as far as dealing with hurdles and red tape and that sort of thing, and maybe your experience with the city, I've only been on council for a short period of time, but you have a friend in me. There's a new sheriff in town when it comes to dealing with this sort of thing, so I can assure you of that. So anyways, anything I can do to help you, I'll be like a dog on a bone. I can promise you that. So
That's why our presentation, like we take a lot of pride in the community that we work in, but we also live in.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here to come pass these operate our business in a safe manner, safe and productive manner.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Boushy, Councillor White.
So we will vote for the motion that Mr. Jackson suggested, and we move to the provincial government for the rest of it.
I would recommend you pass the motion today. The concerns have been noted, and there'll be a follow-up motion on it also.
Okay, I move that.
Is there a second for the vote? Councillor Dennis, Councillor White. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Bradley. Thanks for your presentation. And it's always interesting to hear your perspective on how things look on the road for your business. So thank you for that. Well done. Happy to support this. I think obviously you provide a tremendous service to the community. So I think it's for me, it's not even a question. But the one concern that does come to mind though, and this is just probably an operations question really, but when we're talking about safety, I think about the fact that you're limited to 20 kilometers an hour and you are on a roadway, sometimes during low visibility periods to try and get from property to property. How do you ensure that you do remain visible? Because there is quite a differential between your speed and that of another vehicle who may be approaching from the rear. How do you handle that in terms of safety? Obviously, it's number one priority for all of us. And is there a way that you can mitigate any risks in low visibility periods to make sure that your vehicles remain within a safe, remain safe with cars approaching quickly from
Dave,
behind?
to answer your question, whether it's a tractor, an RTV, all of our equipment is very visible on the road, regardless of if it's a snowstorm or not. Flashing lights are the main thing that come to mind. You know, they're flashing. It's pretty hard to miss them when you're going down the road. So we do have all of our equipment is equipped with flashing lights, 4 ways. You know, it can be seen in normal conditions as well as low visibility.
Thank you. Councillor Gillis, and I'm going to call the question.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, ladies, for the presentation. GD Lawn has been in our city for decades, and it has been a such a good corporate partner with the city on various things that we've done. I hope that we will see other good things come out of this, particularly when you're talking about the smaller vehicles that you're employing now and the red tape that you've had to deal with. I think what we're doing right here, or will be doing, is moving something ahead that's plaguing a lot more companies like yourselves right across the province. So we're doing it here first in Sarnia. So thank you so much.
Let me call the question. Those in favor? Well, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation.
Thank
If I can move to the last presentation, which is Scott Kember, related to cycle safety on Blackwell Road. This was a late addition, I believe, to the agenda.
It was. It's not in there.
Thank you. Members of the council, Mr. Mayor, Mike Bradley, it's my first time being here, so forgive me if I'm a little bit nervous. Just by way of introduction, my name is Scott Kember. I've lived in Sarnia for about 13 years. Also wanted to welcome everybody in the audience as well. The first question you should ask when you look at this slideshow is the fact that the Imperial brand logo is actually on there. And, you know, like, what's the deal with that? Well, I work for Imperial. I moved here to work for Imperial 13 years ago. And as soon as I got there on day one, they pounded into our brains the importance of safety. And when my boss heard, when I told her that I was interested in going to city council to talk about bicycle safety outside of work, she said, yeah, go ahead. Totally, like, clear your schedule and go. So there's corporate interest in this as well. There's interest across many people that work and live in the city of Sarnia. So Alex Prinz was supposed to be with me today, but he wasn't able to be there. But this is in cooperation with the new Sarnia Foundation as well. Next slide, please. So introducing myself. So I mentioned my name is Scott Kember. I live on 1653 Blackwell. That's right between Modeland and Blackwell Side Road on Blackwell Road on the south side of the road. If you really want to find me, you can look up my address. I've been married for 11 years, so I'm a wife. My wife Ruth. I'm a husband of a loving wife. I'm a father of 3 children currently, and I was going to tell Alex today that I'm actually expecting our 4th. Alex is a very good friend of mine, and he also has 4 children. So I got the surprise just last week that I'm expecting another child. So thank you. I have 3 children, currently 5 years old, 4 years old, and 2 years old. I'm a chemical engineer. I'm a business team leader at Imperial Oil. I've been there for 13 years. I'm active and involved in church leadership at the Sarnia Gospel Hall, and I'm also an avid cyclist and a commuter in the city. I cycle about 3,500 kilometers a year that I actually record on my watch. If the watch goes dead, it doesn't get recorded. But I still bike. When the weather's decent, like today, I wish I was biking. But unfortunately, I'm not, because I had to run from work and back, and you know how it works. I also run. I run about 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers a year I like to stay active. Here's a few pictures proving that it's not just me and my family that bikes, but my 2-year-old is also on a bike, and that was just in November when we went camping. Next slide, please. Alex, who is going to be up here as well with me, is a neighbor just up the road in 1905. He's also been married for 12 years. He's got 4 children, all under 5 years old. He works at Everest Automation, and he's actually a runner, and we've recently taken up the hobby of going in the lake year-round, which is also quite nice. We've done 45 of those this year. So next slide, please. All this to say that we're active people in the community of Sarnia. We try to promote active living, and it's a really good thing to do. And so we wanted to bring our concerns forward here about Blackwell Road. Blackwell Road is a very popular road for a lot of different reasons. If you can just click the next animation. For cyclists, it's very busy. If you look at heat maps of the city, Blackwell Road is one of the most cycled roads in the city for those who are Strava athletes. There's access at the West End parking lot. It's parallel to the Howard Watson Trail. It's a long stretch with no stops, a few little curves, a few hills, which is unfortunately not very common around here, but on Blackwell Road it is. And it's got a really close proximity, obviously, the Blackwell Cycle is well known that a lot of rides lead from there. Next, please. Also for runners, because it's on the Howard Watson Trail, there's lots of 5 and 10 kilometer loops on the trail. Not a lot of people like to drive or run up and then turn around and run back. They like to do loops. And so it's also one of the densest place where we actually, people actually run is along that section of the Howard Watson Trail. There's access to multiple beaches like Moldland, Blackwell, and Mike Weir Park, as you know. Next slide, please. For families and home buyers, this has been like the hottest area for real estate lately. I waited 5 years to find a house on this road. There's a lot of new construction going on there. Half it backs onto the Howard Watson Trail. The other half backs onto an open field. People like it. The housing prices is high. Taxes, unfortunately, are high as well, but we'll forgive you for that. The proximity to really good schools and access to great beaches. It's an unbelievably nice place to live. It's very popular. However, next slide, please. It is not safe. Blackwell Road is definitely not a safe place to raise your children. Now that I have 4 kids or 3 kids, 1 more on the way, I'm starting to realize that more and more. For cyclists, runners, or for families, it's not safe. There's no shoulders on the road, as you know. Lots of areas, there's not even an unpaved shoulder on the road. There's no sidewalks. There's poor lighting in the areas near Blackwell Side Road, as well as near Moldland Road, as well as near Telfer as well. Right up front of my house, it's actually also very dark. The traffic regularly travels in excess of 70 kilometers an hour. Now, these people live close to Blackwell Road, and they probably know, or certainly they start there. You would know that, like Blackwell Side Road even is a 50. Who drives 50 on Blackwell Side Road? Who drives 50 on Blackwell Road? If you're from Blackwell, if you're from Brights Grove and you're trying to shortcut on Blackwell Road, you are going to be speeding. The police would know that. If anyone's on police, they want to go out there, they're cashing in big time. Okay, so it's also a frequently used emergency route. I would never allow my children to walk to school or even to a neighbor's house at this point. I mean, they're 5 years old, sure, but even older kids who are more responsible. Large groups of bikers often frequent this road as well. So the Bluewater Grand Fondo, I have a quote from Ken McAlpine, basically saying that there's 150 bikers that have signed up for this. I'm also planning on doing the Bluewater Grand Fondo this year, but they do practice rides Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Wednesday night, you go start even this time of year as it starts to warm up. You go out on Wednesday night and you can count over 150 bikers go by. It's extremely popular road. However, it's not safe. And so then you also have commuters that run back and forth to Brights Grove. So that's my case for action. It's popular, but it's not safe. So let's go to the next slide. And it's not just me. And if Alex was here, he would say it's not just him. I just texted a few of my neighbors, and I've got some screenshots up there. So Jimmy, I can't remember his last name, but he works at Extreme Auto. He is one of my neighbors up the road. He says, my kids have many friends that live on Blackwell Road. It's very busy. I'm not comfortable. There's no shoulder. It's not safe for anyone. Jared DeGroot says there's just comes down to the fact that there's no room for cyclists and pedestrians. Bluewater Grand Fondo had also responded back. We have people commenting about excessive speed, lots of young families. And something that's very solemn to me is that one of these days I'm scared it's not going to end well. And you might say, well, just keep your kids off the road. Well, that's easier said than done when they're starting to outnumber me 2-1. Okay. So my neighbors also said that they lived there for a long time and their children have not been able, or they would never allow their children to actually go out on the road. And then there's a few examples of accidents that have happened even in the last 5 years that I've lived there. Next slide, please. So what am I recommending? There's a lot of easy things we can do, and there's a lot of hard things that we can do. Easy things are improve the lighting. Like, we gotta improve like that. I mean, for the amount of property tax I pay, I should be able to, no. I understand that you guys have a budget as well, but if we could look at improving lighting, most notably west of Blackwell Side Road, and I have a few maps in the backup that would also, folks like David back there, the engineering side of things could have a look at. Like maintaining, there's a section of line, I've also highlighted as well, there's a section of Blackwell Road that also needs to be maintained. There's long grass that grows there. Every time we go by there with the dog or whatever, there's ticks in that area. All you gotta do is cut the grass down. I'll even do it for you if you would like. But that if we could just cut that grass down, it'd be really nice, and maintain that section of line, and possibly add just a tiny little bit more gravel in that section, so that when there's something coming by, when there's a car coming by, you actually can step onto something and not just into the ditch or into tick grass. And then improving signage is another area that we would like to do as well. So those are the easy things to do. In the medium things that I'd really like to see is I'd like to have more access to the Howard Watson Trail. If you can keep people off of the road itself, that's a great thing, and more access to the Howard Watson Trail. Right now, there's really no accesses other than at the very ends. And so if you want to go to the Howard Watson Trail, you either have to trespass across somebody's yard, or you got to walk way out and around to the ends. And so there's a few like easy places that we could do it. One through the old dump. There's one of my neighbors said that they would be happy to do it at 1700 Blackwell. And then there's the Purdy's property, which I know there's going to be developed at some point. It's a great spot to put an access through to the Howard Watson Trail. I would either lower or enforce the speed limit. I know that impacts me every single day, but that's fine. That speed limit of in excess of 70 kilometers an hour on a regular basis is and then there were a few people who were interested, and these aren't just all my ideas. This is like some of my neighbors as well, interested in that traffic light we had at Blackwell and Moldland for a little while we were working on Lakeshore Road. By the way, Lakeshore Road is phenomenal, like an excellent job on Lakeshore Road, whoever did that planning with that nice wide shoulder. And then when we had that light there at the end of the road, that was actually also very helpful as well. And then in the long term, I know that there's plans, especially New City Corporation, they're very interested in incorporating sidewalks or paved shoulders in future development. Blackwell Road has kind of been always a sort of a rural area. It's not developing like a rural area. There's no place along there anymore where there's no houses, but yet it's being treated still the same way. Everybody's on septic, and I'm not saying to change that, but what I'm saying is we need to, from a facility standpoint that allows people to move up and down freely on and safely on the road, we need to incorporate sidewalks and paved shoulders in future development. That is all the recommendations I have. I don't have a question slide, but do you have any questions?
Well, I'll do that. I'm going to ask Mr. Jackson if he had any comments on the easy and medium and the hard. Good presentation. It fits, but
Yeah, through the mayor to council, from our perspective, we'd like the opportunity to, take this back and report back at a future meeting, and we can outline options to address each of those sections, cost, timeline, those kinds of things.
Councillor Gillis, Councillor Vandenberg, Councillor Kilner, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Kimber. Thank you for your presentation. And also thank you very much to everyone who sent letters to us. We've been getting them all weekend, and some are a formal letter, but others are a personal account. So really appreciate that. I did want to draw Mr. Jackson's attention to one of your recommendations that you mentioned about speed on the road. I do travel that road a lot, and yes, I do 50 kilometers an hour. 50 kilometers, because I set my cruise control on it, and I hold up traffic, but I do it anyway. But to you, through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Jackson, is there any way that we can create a community zone in that area so that it would automatically reduce the speed?
Through America, that is an option, and we can bring those options back.
So I would ask that be incorporated in your discussion as well.
I believe you got that consideration. Okay, Councillor Vandenberg,
Thank you.
Councillor Kilner, and Councillor Dennis, and then I'll call the question. I'll look for the question, I guess.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, is Blackwell Road considered a county road? Because I agree with you, sir. Yeah, I drove there yesterday. I drive there all the time, but yesterday I did it just because you had your presentation. the speed, people are driving well above the posted speed limit, always. And to your, talking about, you know, coming off the Howard Watson Trail, I've walked along Blackwell Road and it's like taking your life in your hands. So, yeah, very dangerous. You know, a lot of people don't swerve around you and you've got no shoulder. So yes, I think it's something, I don't know how how Blackwell Road got to be on a cycling map, but thank you very much for your presentation.
Councillor Kilner, Councillor Dennis, I look for a motion to refer this presentation to staff for further analysis and to come back to us.
Yeah, I just would like to thank you for this incredible presentation, just alerting us to the dynamic shifts that have taken place on that road. I mean, I've been using that road since childhood, and it is dramatically different. I also want to say thank you for highlighting the necessity for access to the Howard Watson Trail. We already have throughout other parts of the city, because I mean, I bike to work throughout the summer, and there are access points kind of, you know, along like near Rosedale and Wiltshire that allow me to not use overpasses and you know, get across really busy parts of Exmo Street with lights. So those are all safety measures. I think you're totally right. As a person who's watched that happen over that area develop over 30 plus years. So just wanted to say thank you, and I'll look forward to that report.
Thank you. I got Councillor Dennis. I'll look for a resolution to request a report from staff on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. I live in the Grove, so sometimes there's been days when I take that road 2, 4 times a day. I think what you're asking for is very, very reasonable. I think it's you know, you have a problem and you've proposed some very, very reasonable solutions. What I've noticed, of course, is that particular stretch of Blackwell. You know, early in the morning when I'm coming into town, quite often it's a school bus. Some school buses go along there, and sometimes drivers are very antsy. Maybe they're late for work or whatever, and sometimes they try to get ahead of the school bus before they make their regular stops and such. And I think to myself, boy, is that ever dangerous, and so on. But I think there could be a little bit of land on the. You mentioned you live on the south side of Blackwell. On the north side of Blackwell, there seems like there's a little bit more land on that side for a possible walkway or such. But there's no question that's quite a strip, and you're right. The people do have a heavy foot along that way. It's like a curve. It's almost like it's calling people with heavy foots to kind of test their driving skills or whatever. But that makes a lot of sense, with what you're saying, and thank you for coming forward. Yeah, you know, with your community, your concerns for the safety of your family and others, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White, Councillor Gillis.
Oh, thanks. I was just going to raise my hand to make the motion. If everyone else is.
I just asked Mr. Jackson, what's a reasonable time period to review this and bring it back to us for the councillor?
For the mayor to council, I think we could have a high level report for the April meeting.
Councillor White, do you want to move that?
So moved. Thanks.
Seconded, Councillor Burrow. Any further discussion? Well, thank you again very much for the presentation.
All right.
And we'll keep you posted on what's happening.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. If we can move into the regular agenda, council, moving to item number 3, which is a reallocation of some funds related to the sewer plant. Councillor Burrow's moving it. Secretary Councillor Gillis. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Next is the transit report, and you've had this before, looking at some suggested changes. Councillor Burrow's moving the changes, seconded by Councillor Gillis. Any discussion? Councillor Dennis?
Bus routes.
This is the transit.
Yes, I would like to speak to this. Thank you to staff for this report. The analysis is good work. I will be supporting the staff recommendation of option 3, as it has no budget impact and yet helps address the problem. I do not believe we could ever support an additional annual operating cost of $700,000 and a capital cost of $3 million in order to address the 61 people who preferred this significantly more costly option. We need cost-effective solutions, and the staff recommendation is just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gillis, then the question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I just wanted to make it aware to perhaps not ourselves, but our listening audience, that this is a pilot project for a year, and I believe it starts on March 19th. Is that correct, Mr. Jackson?
That is correct.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the changes? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Moving then down further, there's a report to you on a new integrity commissioner for the next 4 years. Councillor Burrow, moving the recommendation. Seconder, Councillor White. Let's see, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions in this regard. We seem to have only had two applications for applications of interest for this. I was just concerned as to why we only had two. Was there something in the application that people didn't like, or it just seems strange that we only have two?
Who can speak to that?
For the mayor to council, I'm not sure I have a justification as to the low number of proponents who are interested in bidding on this. There were 4 who took the RFP and 2 submissions. Fortunately, I don't have an answer.
Okay. I trust though you could probably give me something a little more robust later on, if you don't mind, following the discussion that we have in the direction of how this is going to go. But there is another thing that I would ask. In the actual, the person that's being recommended, I didn't see that we had the opportunity as councillors to contact these people if we have questions with regard to code of conduct and how it applies to us. And I didn't know if that was incorporated into their fee, or would we have to pay on a per capita or a per person basis when we bring anything forward to them? Because I would hope that it would be all inclusive within their fee.
Through the mayor to council, any services provided by the IC, including providing advice and recommendations to individual members of council, would be subject to the hourly fees set out in the financial cost section here. So if your question is when members of council reach out to
Yes.
receive advice with respect to their obligations under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act or the Code of Conduct or any other ethical standards to which they're subject, the $300 per hour fee would be applicable, and we would be billed accordingly.
Going to call the question, and those in favor? Those opposed? The only opposition was from Councillor Gillis, and I supported the motion. Let's move on further to the next item. And this is the very exciting Lines Fences Act. Councillor Burrow. Yes, you're moving to eliminate it though. Okay.
Yes.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I would hope not. All in favor? That is unanimous too. I was just stunned that would get a media story. Had to be a really slow news day. Next is number 7. Councillor Burrow, you're moving that as a housekeeping action. We need a seconder. Councillor White, any discussion? All, Councillor Burrow? No, all in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. And there was an addendum with a couple of additional motions that came in. As I move into the notices of motion, Councillor Kellner. Was it actually a motion? Did you
Excuse me. Thank you, Your Worship. It's more of a point of information for councillors and for yourself and for staff and the public of interest. There is an ongoing issue for pet owners in this community and across the province, as many municipalities are aware. And the short of it all is that we have a couple of engaged citizens who have placed petitions out trying to engage a conversation between the general public and our vet clinics, which I believe there are about 12 in the area. the particular person we've seen in the news media suffered a devastating pet loss during that blizzard we had. I believe it was Christmas Eve, and has put out petitions. Her particular petitions you have for information in your docket. At that point, it was over 300 signatures received. At this point, I have the additional signatures, which I will submit to the city clerk, that has 548 in total. And that's a petition that you can't go online and just click a button for. This one required effort to go to certain pet shops in the city. I have another one here that has over 4,500 signatures from through change.org. I think, as far as I'm concerned, I do think we are at a critical time where we need to start initiating a conversation both locally, but also through some of the apparatuses of government around access to more vets, which may include talking with the provincial government about vet schools and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just bringing this for information, but I did also want to give that background that I'm hoping that we can stir up a conversation that's in person and not simply through newspapers, because I think people hold their pets very, very dear to them. I know how it felt during a political election cycle to lose a pet just a couple of weeks before an election. And it was a devastating loss. For me, that happened during business hours. I can't imagine somebody being in that position during a blizzard, being told the closest location's 3 hours away, putting themselves at risk, plus the pet. So I'm just looking to stir up a conversation so that people have an idea of what vets are facing, what our residents are facing, and are there any ways to begin addressing this with our local resources? Are there also ways to leverage some of our political will across the province? So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kellner. I do believe this council in the last term did pass a motion that went to the province and the veterinarian community. So perhaps that could be recirculated too. We'll follow up again, see where we can take this. So there isn't a resolution per se.
Maybe just a question. Do we have any, like we have an agreement with the Humane Society for certainly for services that they provide for the community. Is there something we could maybe work through that might have some value? Because I know they're even in the facility they're building, there's going to be I believe a veterinarian there, or a veterinarian service there. And I don't know whether that can be worked with them or not.
Yeah, I'll take that as a motion to investigate that, if that makes sense, to ask staff to investigate.
I can move that or second it if he wishes to move it.
Yeah, now there's something on the record too, so we keep track of this stuff. So Councillor Kellner, you're moving that we consult with the Humane Society to look at there's some options they could present to the community.
Sure, Your Worship, but I'd also want to hear from Councillor Vandenberg, because I know he has some knowledge around that, particularly around how busy clinic staff really are. I know the public, has their concerns, but I also know clinic owners also have their concerns, and I think Councillor Vandenberg might know a little bit more than I do.
Your Worship, thank you, Councillor Kellner. I'm going to suggest this. As a current board member and former chair, why don't I just take it to our next board meeting, discuss the matter with our board and our executive director, and then I can bring a report back from our board as to the feasibility and what we can look at down the road. I can undertake to do that.
Thank you for that. I will take that as the motion for you to pursue that and report back to us when you can.
I would do that, yes.
Okay, all those in favor of that? That's done. It's unanimous. Councillor Vandenberg, you have a motion. A speed reduction.
My motion is that staff be directed to review the segment of Colburn Road between Cathcart Boulevard and Lakeshore Road to determine if a speed limit reduction is warranted. Your worship, the history of that road, as you'll recall, it was reduced for bicycle lanes, additional parking. The people I've spoken to in that area are concerned about the high speeds along there. And I said I would bring this motion here today to and ask staff if they could do that for us and come back with a report.
And Councillor Gillis seconded that, so. Okay. You've moved it, she seconded it. All those in favor?
Just a question.
Just a question as seconder, if I may.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to your emotion, if I could, with regard to speed limit reduction. Could it also be considered for a community zone designation, which would give you your automatic reduction?
I'll take that as part of the motion. That be considered.
you.
Councillor Burrow.
Yes, just sort of a comment in that, to me, in that particular area, the comments I get more often than not is, if anything, it's difficult to travel through there because of so many vehicles pulling into the Tim Hortons. So I have never had many comments with regard to high speed. It's more blocked movement. But anyway, I'll wait the staff report.
Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? That is done. So we're through that portion. If Councillor White, you had a motion. Do you want to put that under urgent business?
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. Yes, after conversation with the CAO, I will move this today as opposed to giving notice for next meeting. If my colleagues will indulge me just for a moment, the Brock Street and George Street intersection, I think historically has seen a significant number of accidents. Another one was just raised to my attention a few days ago. And personally, I've attended that scene or that site many times following accidents and can certainly speak to and how vulnerable it seems to be. So today I would just move that staff review accident data for the Brock and George Street intersection, as well as the full corridor of Brock Street and Vital Street, to come back with comments and potential solutions to curb any future traffic consideration. That makes sense.
The intent.
I know where we're going with that.
The intent is there, and we do have a seconder. Any further questions? All those in favor? That is done. It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving, can we get the minutes moved by Councillor Boushy there? The minutes, please. And I'll take it, that includes all the other meetings too. Okay, and that's seconded by Councillor. Okay, that's seconded by Councillor White. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on then, if we could, any urgent business beyond Councillor White's? Councillor Burrow?
Yes, from the in camera, I indicated I would move that we have the airport financial reports be made public on a regular basis with the reports back from staff, and that the information be appropriate to be being made public.
Oh, that'd be quarterly, you think?
I think quarterly.
Okay. Second for that, Councillor Vandenberg, all in favor? That is done. Moving on then, routine approvals, Councillor Boushy. You just move the items A to N produced. And Councillor White seconding that, all in favor? Are there any items from the correspondence? Councillor Vandenberg.
Just a clarification under item H, is it really beer drain? Is that the name of it?
Yes,
Where is the beer drain?
next to the
Never heard
whiskey
of it.
drain.
Seeing no other, I'm going to ask you to move the routine approvals. Councillor Boushy, you moved the civic reports, routine approvals, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Civic reports. Yeah, you move that the civic reports be received and filed. Seconded by Councillor Gillis. Yeah. No, it's fine this way. And I'll take it as a general one. All those in favor? That's done. And bylaws, Councillor Boushy. And I should say it's bylaws 1 to 11 because 12 was pulled for some reasons. Okay. And seconder is Councillor Kilner. Any questions on the bylaws? I'm not seeing any. So let's move that we take them as printed 1 to 11 and read for the third time and finally passed. All in favor? That is done. And now adjournment, Councillor Boushy. Take us home now. It's getting late. Councillor Boushy, you could move the city council adjourn to the next regular meeting. Very last. Yes, and now we're into the adjournment. Yes. Yes, to March 13th. All in favor? That one's always unanimous. Thank you, everyone.